It's time once again. Yeah, baby, it's Monday. Well, it's not Monday right now, but it's Monday, and it's time for another edition of the Vandy Vlog. Yeah. I'm joined in the vehicular device I'm joined with the heavyweight champion of Impact Pro Wrestling, baby. I'm with Justin Decent.
Man, somebody is hype. I'm digging it.
You know, we just got done with the Impact Pro Wrestling show in Algona. So this is pre-recorded. Woo, yay! But it's awesome. We just had a great show, fun time. A lot of shenanigans were done. I hope you like that word, shenanigans.
I'm a big fan of shenanigans. I am the king of shenanigans.
Shenanigans. You know, don't say shenanigans. Shenanigans.
Don't pistol with me if you say shenanigans.
So we have you on the program. I'm very honored to have you. I've been wanting you on the show for a while. I know you've talked about it as well, wanting to get on and talk shit. So we start with this. You, as I mentioned, are the heavyweight champion of the world in Impact Pro Wrestling. What's it been like being the champ?
Oh, man. Amazing. Really. It's been kind of a huge boost, a huge increase in my career. Sky's the limit, man. I was, gotta be honest, I was hitting a point, I'm a little more seasoned than some of the guys out there. And I was kind of starting to get that feeling, okay, maybe things are winding down. I'm kind of, maybe it's time to think about slowing it up. And then, boom, I got a second wind. And it'll be a year ago next month, man. June 20th, won the heavyweight title out of a tournament that I wasn't even invited in initially. I was a last-minute entrant, replacing somebody else. And ever since then, fighting hard, man. Having some of the greatest matches I've ever had, some of the best opponents I've ever had. Since I was a wee kid, I've had a love for wrestling. But, man, the passion I'm feeling now could possibly compete with little 6-year-old Justin Decent. It's a close competition, man.
Now, like, I know you're an avid weight room guy. You work, you push hard in the weight room. When you get that championship, does that kind of add a little extra, hey, you know what? I might bust out one more set. I might do this, a little more weight on this. Like, does that add to the workout?
Without a doubt, man. Every day I'm in there, I'm hitting the weights, and once I start to feel fatigued, I'm thinking, man, I could wrap this up. I think about it. No, you're the fucking champion. I hold myself to a higher standard because I need to have a higher standard. You know, it's one thing to be, oh, I'm a local wrestler. No, I'm the champion. I'm the face of what we do. And I need to exude that for my sake, for the sake of the people coming to the show, and for the boys coming up. You know, I kind of feel like it's my job to give them something to aspire to, which is very humbling. I never really had a lot of ego about myself in that regard, but, you know, once I found myself in that spot, I kind of took it really serious. I want to be the best I am at every aspect of wrestling, and fitness is a big part of it. And hopefully, you know, the work I put in causes those guys to look at me and go, hey, that's the guy I need to ask questions to.
No, you mean, you mentioned, you know, you push harder, you keep going, and you want these young guys to kind of take off of that and motivate themselves as well. But at one point, you were kind of in those guys' shoes as well.
Absolutely.
You know, coming up, and obviously a lot has changed since then. I remember watching you before I, got into Impact Pro Wrestling, into wrestling in general. I remember Ray Fury and I, we watched the shows, as well as Chris Arn. We would watch the shows, and you had the little short hair with the goatee combo going. It was the hair over the ears.
Looked like Mom cut it with a bowl.
What was that like? Was that kind of something that you wanted to go for? And I mean, be unique? Because like Ugly had talked about on a former vlog that one of the reasons why he did the face paint and the look that he went with was because he wanted to stand out. He wanted to be different because he knew that would help him get on shows, and that would help him show, hey, I got a different look and I can do this.
Oh, man, I wish I had a great reason like that. No, in all honesty, some people may not know this, but prior to joining the ranks of Impact Pro Wrestling, I spent 6 years in the Army. And when I first started wrestling, I'd only been out of the Army for a month. So I had the super short buzz cut. And anybody who's ever grown their hair out will understand this. There's this phase in between long enough to put it in a ponytail and short enough to at least keep it in a hat and look respectable, where you just look like a Q-tip gone crazy. And there's not a thing you can do except accept the fact that you look like a tool.
Now, you did touch on a little bit, and I want to talk about it. This is a very special Memorial Day edition of the Vandy Vlog. I post videos every Monday, so I can stay, just, hey, boom, start of the week, here you guys go. You mentioned it just a little bit ago about how you served. You were on active duty for the Guard, and what was that like? I mean, how long did you serve for, and what kind of experiences did you go through?
Well, I split my time. I spent some time in the active duty Army and in the National Guard. Man, it's an amazing experience. It's very humbling. There's a saying I've always liked that I heard, and I stick to it myself, is I'm not a hero, but I served with heroes. I had the awesome experience of being able to meet some amazing people from around the country, and we all had the same goal. We just wanted to do our job. We wanted to serve. We wanted to do our part to keep our loved ones at home safe and to keep our country protected. It's interesting. It's a very different lifestyle, but in a lot of ways, I associate it a lot with wrestling because it's a unique environment that doesn't exist a lot in the regular world, where the person you're working with and the person you're standing next to very literally has their life in your hands, and vice versa. And in wrestling, it's really no different. When you're in that ring, there's a lot of scary situations, and your well-being is at risk, and there's a lot of trust, a lot of confidence, a lot of physical elements that come into play that you only experience in a place like the military. And I think that puts you in an interesting mindset going into something like this.
Now, what motivated you to serve for the country? I mean, what motivated you to get involved?
Man, ever since I was a little kid, there were two things I wanted to do. And, you can ask my grandma, my great-grandpa, everybody I've ever grew up around. From the minute I could speak, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to be in the Army because that's what my family did. I had 5 uncles who served. 1 in Desert Storm, 3 in Vietnam, 1 in Korea. Grandpa was in World War II. I mean, serving is kind of what we do. And I won't lie, there was a certain element, one man in particular I look forward to seeing every Monday night as a kid, the Sergeant Slaughter. He was a wrestler. He was a soldier. Well, I correct myself. I apologize to everybody out there. He was a Marine. Those who are Marines know the difference, and I apologize to them. But that was a guy I could really get behind, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to serve, and I wanted to wrestle. And let's face it, being a G.I. Joe doesn't make it any less cool.
So then you come back from duty, you come back from the Guard, you get back into professional wrestling now. Because did you start training then go over, or did you train, or did you go into duty and then come train?
It's actually kind of a little bit of all the above. Okay. I enlisted in 1999, shortly after graduating high school. While I was going to college, I enlisted in the National Guard. The indecent one may have played around a little bit in college, a little more than he needed to. There may have been a letter requesting me not to come back. So after a couple years knocking around, just kind of working schlub jobs during the week, serving on the weekends, I said, this really isn't doing it for me. Decided to go all out. Went active duty, did a couple years there. And then I came back, got out, came back to Iowa, and some of my friends that I had grown up with were wrestling. And it already started with Impact Pro Wrestling. So I started following around. I worked security. I sold the nachos. I sold the tickets. I ran the music. I did everything I could to be around the business. And I had just started training with a couple of friends of mine. And about 3 or 4 weeks into that, I get a letter in the mail. And I had actually been recalled out of an inactive status and to be deployed to Iraq. So before I even really got started, I went on deployment to Iraq. And when I came home, jumped in both feet, didn't look back. Within a month, I was in the ring training all the time. And don't regret a minute of that. Greatest decision I ever made.
Now, what year was that? That was
2000 and January 2006, because I got home the end of November 2006, beginning 2007 I started training.
So 2006 and then 2007, you're starting to go in there. What has changed? I've asked this to a lot of guys, and I like hearing the different responses. What has changed since then as far as training, as far as the guys coming in, and for you, what's changed?
You know, I could sit here and be like every other old guy and say, oh, we had it so much harder in my day, we trained so much more. And in some elements, I'd probably be some truth in that. I had a fantastic group of guys I trained with. Marshall Scott, Sean Roman, Anthony Draven. You know, the four of us were in the same training class. And we were a handful. Surprised TS Aggressor let us stick around. It was train all day Saturday until he literally kicked us out. Go get dinner, come back with beer, commence to drink and continue wrestling all night until we got up Sunday the next day and did it all over again. And I think that's an element that's missing, and I think it's just, I'm not going to sit here and be the old guy who says, oh, well, we had it harder, we wanted it more. I don't think it's so much that as every year, every generation, the pace of the world picks up a little bit. And I don't know that the guys we have today have the time to dedicate to that. But they work hard when they're there, and that works for them. The thing that I noticed is the biggest change is the style of wrestling you see. I feel when I was getting started on the independents in general, there was a huge tendency towards the old school way of wrestling, the 80s style, the 70s, 80s, AWA, NWA style of wrestling. So the pace was a little slower. But through the advent of social media and electronic media and things like that, you kind of have to step your game up. Because, you know, in that time, not even that long ago, but in that time, it was harder for people to find other wrestling to watch. Whereas now, you've got the network, you've got the internet. Anybody can watch anything they want. So you have to do something a little extra special to draw them out of their house and bring them to your show. So you got to step up that game. You got to pick up the pace. You got to be a little more exciting. You got to do a lot more flashy, fun, interesting things to keep their interest. So I feel like the pace is picking up. The style of wrestling has shifted to a lot more higher impact, faster paced wrestling.
Now, before we get out of here, we got a little bit of time left before we get out. I talked with James Jeffries. We'll have a future interview with him coming out soon. I talked with him, and you have a very important match. You talked about working harder, doing that, and you are picking up the pace on your training. You're working hard in the gym. You have a very big match coming up in Waterloo. A match that is the first ever cage match in Waterloo for Impact Pro Wrestling. It is you defending your heavyweight championship of the world against James Jeffries with J.J. Dillon in his corner.
That's a tall order. And I give credit where credit is due. James Jeffries is probably one of the single most talented individuals I have stepped through the ropes and had to look across the ring at. But we have wrestled each other a lot. We know what the other one brings to the table, which makes it that much more intense. For everything I've got, he's got an answer.
Can you beat him, though? Can you beat him? He says he can get you. He says he's already warned you in my video with him. He says, you know what, you better be ready, Justin, because it's not going to be a cakewalk. He says he's ready.
You know, trying to be a nice guy about it, but okay, if you're going to throw it out there, you know, let's be honest. You got a $110 soaking wet carrying a 6-pack under each arm. You got 250 pounds of cold steel and sex appeal. You know, I can respect J.J. Dillon. He managed the greatest group of men to ever set foot in a wrestling ring. But they had the talent before he showed up. James is still James at the end of the day, no matter who's in that corner. And for anybody who follows what we do, I've already proven, hey, you know what? He might be the king of Algona, but I'm the king of the cage. And if anybody doubts that, talk to Ricky Love.
Before we get out of here, you know, just a little thing here. You mentioned J.J. Dillon. If you need some services during the Waterloo show, I know a guy, handsome as hell, brutally tall some days, and would gladly manage you if you need some help.
Really?
Yeah.
What's his name?
We'll talk business about that after this show's over. Alrighty, Justin, thanks for joining us on the Vandy vlog.
Anytime, brother.
Thank you very much. Any message you want to tell everybody for Memorial Day before we get out?
Remember those who didn't come home to the barbecue, because they're the reason we get to enjoy the day.
Alrighty, folks, this has been a very special edition of the Vandy vlog. You want to hit the boom? You want to do the boom, that red button right there? Join us next week. Boom!